On today's show, how to save and pay for your education with 529 plans and more.
It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
You know, we've done 529, we've done college planning episodes in the past. What I like though is this isn't just a rewind where we're going to cover the exact same stuff we've done previously, because the landscape changes. Even the ones that are good, the ones that are bad, they don't stay consistent through time. And so I like that we're going to be able to do a slightly different spin this time through.
We're going to get to talk about tax law changes. I'm going to tell you, I'm also going to blow the whistle on something I think is a somewhat deceptive practice that's going on out there in the 529 evaluation space.
Okay.
So we'll cover that. And then I want to go into a deeper dive in, we talk about 529s, but let's just talk about education in general, some trends that are going on. If you have young children, middle school, basically if you have children or you're thinking about education funding at all, this is going to be your resource today. Right. So let's kind of first, everybody knows that anybody who's been part of the Money Guy family for any period of time knows that I have a big thing I tell you. Bo and I are leaving tomorrow to go to FinCon.
That's right.
We're catching a flight. And one of the first things that's going to happen is there's going to be a flight attendant that's going to get up there before the plane even leaves the ground. And they're going to walk us through safety protocols. And what are they going to tell us, Bo?
They're going to say, you know, before you put the oxygen mask on someone next to you, before you take care of a child or a parent or another individual, you have to make sure that you are securely fastened and that you take care of yourself first before you help others.
So the best way to do that is to go back to the Money Guy order of operations. Bo's going to walk us through this. And I want you guys to pay attention. We're going to walk through these rather quickly because we've done hours worth of content on this. It's something for you to easily go look up. But watch how many steps occur before we get to education.
So if you think about the order of operations that we've laid out, you know, step one, you want to make sure your deductibles are covered. Step two, you want to go out, get your employer match, right? That's free money. So we have our emergency fund-ish, we have our free money. Step three, pay off credit card and high interest, other punitive types debt. Step four, determine the size and need of your actual emergency fund, which is more than just the deductibles. Step five, go take advantage of those tax-free opportunities through Roths and HSAs. Step six, double back and max out retirement plans.
A lot of steps going on here.
Keep
going.
Step seven, then you start hyper-accumulating. It's not just the IRA. You think about saving that 20 to 25%. And then...
Whoa, there's
and
college.
Then step eight, save for college, but make sure you're putting your financial independence mask on first before you start taking care of you.
So that's kind of a fourth quarter thing. This is not something you're doing on the front end. And that's why I'm always amazed. People are willing to put their financial security in jeopardy because they're worried about their children. And we often say all the time is that your children can go get financial aid. Your children can go get student loans. You cannot go get a loan for retirement.
Nope.
The best thing you can do is move into the basement of your kids.
No, the best thing you can do is not move into the basement of your kids. That should be the ultimate goal.
Well, that's a great segue into let's talk about who is paying for what. Now, I want to kind of set this up is that there is fairy tale land and then there's reality. So fairy tale land is that, this is a stat that Daniel found for us. 62% of students assume their parents will pay for 100% of college costs.
No, I remember, like I'm thinking back to young Bo Jr., way back when, like early on, like when I first understood what college was, not like when I actually was thinking about it, but I'm talking like 4th, 5th, 6th grade, early on when you hear about college students, I think the natural progression is, oh, okay, yeah, well, I'll do that and I'll just go and, you know, just like mom and dad made it where I could go to middle school and then high school, college will be the same thing. It's just the natural progression of education. I think a lot of students start with that mindset, right?
6 out of 10, obviously, more than half think that it's all going to be taken care of. What's now? That's the what's the reality of the situation?
Parents only end up paying for about 23% of total college costs.
So 62% think their parents are going to cover this. We find out that 23% is what parents are actually going. There's obviously a divide.
There's some separation.
Something is not working out there. And then here's another stat that blew my mind as Daniel was going out there and finding those hard to find, unique things, is that 13% of families are using 529s.
Yeah, that was sort of alarming to me because we kind of take it as second nature. When anyone thinks about like saving for college, we just throw out, oh, a 529. I mean, barely more than 1 in 10 families are actually using these fantastic instruments.
So here's what I realized, because you guys, the Money Guy families watching this show, You guys are that 13%. Because
That's right.
look, we take a lot of flack when we've done these shows on debt and other things. There's always people going, whoa, nobody does this. I'm like, yeah, they do. A lot of people do this stuff. It's just that they're money guy insiders and money
That's
guy
right.
family members. You guys are the financial mutants that are doing this thing differently. But I'm telling you, because you're the type of person that's focusing on making these good decisions, look at this slide and that says that only 13% of families are using 529s, and use this as your message to go out there and tell your friends, your family,
That's right.
and others to please go check out resources like the Money Guy Show so that you're not the only one that's making good decisions with your
Absolutely.
finances. So let's talk about this communication, because in the grand scheme of it, we've got another show coming up on marriage later, Bo, but and one of the key things there is communication, and it works in this too. There's a lot of things that everything works better if you understand that communication is key. And this is, walk them through those stats.
Yeah, so what we found that was really interesting says only 40% of parents have told their kids that they're going to have to help pay for their college costs. Meaning only 40% of folks have said, hey, by the way, we're not going to be able to do this. And then 50% haven't discussed how the financial aid process works at all.
One of my pet peeves, because this is the research study that Daniel found, was these were 10th graders. And I have a daughter that's in the 10th grade. And I think it is one of the great big things that if you want to talk about bubbles or big things that are boiling under the surface, and it's already starting to poke out a little bit, is how we let 17, 18, and 19-year-old kids lock down 6 figures worth of debt.
So sometimes
sits on
even
their shoulders.
multiple 6 figures of debt.
So understanding how financial aid works, how you're going to pay for it, how the choice of your university has an impact, the choice of your major. I mean, there's all kind of things. You sent out an article early this morning on the top paying career paths or majors in college.
Top 10 highest paying college degrees, and then the top 10 lowest paying college degrees.
This stuff ought to be mandatory viewing for anybody in high school. And I don't know how many high schools are actually taking that serious and using that type of information, but it is definitely concerning that so much about how you're going, like we said, 62% just think parents are going to pay for it. And I think a majority of people think they're just going to college because it has become part of our society's fabric that this is a great thing. Yep. You've got to do it. But when you look at it, it's just people are not talking about this. So let's talk about the realistic expectations, because if you understand what you're going to major in, what it will pay you after you graduate, it will help you figure out how do you chart the best path possible so that you don't run up tons of student loan debts and all kind of other things.
And so we were doing some pre-show prep. We were talking about, well, why do we think that the communication is so broken down? Why do we think that parents don't? I think some of it is embarrassment, maybe.
Definitely
maybe
embarrassment.
Parents who haven't done that.
Shame for not having enough saved.
But I think what's so difficult is okay, well, maybe you haven't done the things you feel like you should have done. Maybe you haven't saved the way you should have. You should at least let Junior know, or let your child know, hey, you're going to have to foot this responsibility. Let me talk to you about the ways that you do that. Let me talk to you about student aid process. Let me talk to you about that, because it's just like you said, these kids who are able to rack up these hundreds and thousands of dollars of debt, not only are they able to do that, they have no real measure of what that means.
Yeah.
You take someone who's never even had a full-time paying job and say, oh, well, your first year of college is going to cost you $35,000. And they're like, oh, well, what's that mean? I have, okay,
because
whatever.
you're doing go-kart math.
That's
when you're in
exactly
college,
right.
I mean, because you think you're going to come out of school, even if you come out of college making like $40,000 a year, you're going to think you actually get to keep $40,000. The truth of the matter is you don't get $40,000. If you're lucky,
That's right.
you get to keep $20,000 to $25,000 of it after everybody gets their hand in your back pocket. So it's just important to understand what things cost, because if your kids and your children understand what college is going to cost them, and they know that they're going to have skin in the game, they might do things a little differently.
That's exactly right.
So let's talk about, let's flip the script and talk about what is college actually going to cost. Yep. Now, this was an exercise, and once again, we're trusting upon Daniel's math calculations, but it was scary, but it was actually also exciting to see that you can still afford college. Because I think there's a lot of people out there that are saying, whispering in your ear, that college is now unattainable.
Well, and when you talk about this, you pontificate about this all the time, Brian, about what we've seen with the cost of college over the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years. We even did an exercise on that. It almost seems like those costs have been allowed to run rampant with no real sort of governor on them.
I'm going to go ahead. Scam might be a hard word, but I will tell you, I think student loans enabled universities, colleges, it didn't matter, private, public, it gave them an open season on running up the cost of education. So, and we did a show not too long ago talking about the cost of education at University of Georgia. Right. And we figured out, because I'm the oldest, then we had you as the next oldest, and then we had Daniel as the third one, because we're all UGA grads, and we figured out it was 7% per year inflation. Rate of return wise, that's a pretty healthy rate of return. So you can imagine inflation that's way above average when you do financial plans where inflation has ranged recently from 0.5% to at most 2 to 3%. Right. So, but let me give you some positive trends, because there's so much negative information out there. Let me give you some positive trends that are going on. Right now, the rising costs of college are starting to slow down. Last year, college costs actually went down close to 0.5%. It was actually 0.4% reduction.
That's something worth even repeating, Brian, because I think the common thought out there, especially for parents who have children approaching college age, is, oh, they're just blowing through the roof. It's blowing up, it's blowing up, it's blowing up. Maybe not. Maybe the tide is turning a bit, as there has been some awareness around the costs.
I think the light has been shined upon this, and people are starting, because think about the transition we've had. We had all these for-profit colleges that were advertising on, daytime talk shows, late night if you couldn't sleep. There was a for-profit college that was probably advertising to you. I don't think you see as many of those. There's been a lot of scandals that have come out about how those things were kind of not in your best interest. I think the same light that kind of blew up those situations is also drawn attention to this inflationary pressure that's been on education is unsustainable.
That's right.
So look at this. Here's another stat. Over the last 5 years, 4-year public college costs have actually increased an average of 1.3% per year. That seems much more manageable and much more reasonable.
Yeah, I think about, if you think about like the average cost of living adjustment on pension type plans or just standard inflation, a 1.3% rise in cost is something I feel like we can stomach. I feel like, now you have cash that can pay you more than that, right? So it seems like that seems a little more reasonable, very different than the 7% we've become used to.
So Daniel went and pulled, we went and pulled the College Board. They had stats on what college costs. Now we went ahead, we threw the kitchen sink at this thing, because I didn't want to just put tuition in there. We could put tuition, but let's face it, your kids are going to have to live somewhere. They're going to have transportation. They're going to have activity fees. They're going to have books. They're going to have to eat. We want to know, what is college actually going to cost for your children? And then, but we said, but you can't use just what the College Board puts out today. We need to grow this thing, because let's just assume you have a brand new baby. Congratulations, you are now the brand new parent of this son or daughter. And in 18 years from now, you're going to need to know how to fund their education. Right. So you have 18 years to make this goal happen. We're going to assume that you invest this. You're going to start saving. You can make around 8% per year, and we're going to grow the cost of college by 1.5%, exactly a little bit higher than that stat that I just read to you at 1.3. And then we're going to do this for 18 years. So walk them through what the research from the College Board inflated for the future, what we came up with.
So this is what we determined. We think that the cost of a private, nonprofit, 4-year on-campus university is going to cost total nut about 18 years from now, $278,000. And that actually comes out to about a little under $70,000 per year inflated. If you want to look at a public 4-year, again, living on campus, the number drops down to $138,000. Well, then if you want to look at a public 4-year university living at home.
That's an important concept.
Living at home, it's a significant one. The cost actually drops down to $79,000 for your total cost of tuition. And then if you want to look at like a community college and then a public 4-year, so you care more about where the degree was, less about where the core competency comes in.
I think this deserves a little bit of attention in the fact that doing public education, 2 years community college, and then 2 years at the university, this is something that people often overlook. I had several guys I went to college with that we all graduated with accounting degrees and so forth, but guess what? They got their first 2 years at a community college, and then it's much easier if you have colleges that are hard to get into. Sometimes it's much easier to transition in as a sophomore, as a junior, as you get into some of those major classes, and it can save you a fortune.
And we go speak to high school students all the time, and we even talk to parents about this. We've been blessed that we've hired a number of folks here at the firm, and we've hired a lot of the Money Guy family, folks that were listeners before. And the thing that we hang on the wall when someone comes to us is we put the diploma of where they graduated from.
Sure.
It doesn't talk about year 1, 2, or 3. It only talks about the one where they walked across the stage.
Where you are at the finish line
That's
is
it.
what you're actually graded and recorded on. It didn't matter if you didn't go all 4 years
That's right.
there. I kind of look at this as, now, look, you went to another college for 2 years before
Yep.
you came to UGA. I went all 4 years. Our diplomas look exactly the same.
That's exactly right. Yours looks older and kind of yellowed, but other than that, exactly the same.
Save some secrets for the studio tours. When people come and tour the office, they can see the faded parchment paper that the Egyptians pounded out to put my diploma on. So don't share all the studio tour secrets. But let's talk about, so here's the thing that I want to transition from this slide. So when I look at the $278,000 for private school, when I look at $138,000 for public school, and then even if you stay at home, I mean, we're talking about $79,000 or $64,000 if you're living with your parents or something like that. That still seems somewhat expensive. But how do we break this down to where it's much more digestible? Let's talk about what you actually have to save per month. Because remember, you're the brand new, congratulations, parent of a bouncing boy, bouncing girl, whatever you have. What are you going to need to save every month to make sure they can go to college? So let's go ahead and pull the curtains back and show them that data.
Yeah, so if you want to be able to pay for a private 4-year university living on campus, you need to start saving just a touch under $600 a month when Junior's born. So
that still
about
seems kind of
5-7K.
expensive.
It
Because
does.
when you have babies, you're broke.
There's not exactly money laying around.
Because babies don't generate income initially. They actually kind of pull on the back pocket much more than they generate income.
And then if you want to look at a public 4-year university, it's about $285 a month. So now it's sounding a little bit better.
That sounds like a deal compared to private education, but still expensive.
A public 4-year university, if you're going to live at home, that's $163 a month. And then if you want to do the 2 and 2 type strategy, that's $102.
But listen, that's I don't want to gloss over. That's $100 a month.
That's $100 a month.
Now, when I was, remember, this goes full circle. When I was, sitting a junior in high school, economics, I had that teacher that was also the gym coach, former military, who said, guys, if y'all could just save $100 a month, you'll be a millionaire at retirement. And I was like, I work fast food. I could make $100 and invest $100 a month. It's the same thing. Digestibly, I think it's very easy for the average parent if you can just realize as soon as that baby's born.
Sure.
If you're a grandparent, this is also an awesome thing to know. Start putting around at least $100 a month, and you should be set. Remember the order of operations. Don't get the kids in front of your own retirement, but this shows that it is manageable and digestible.
And remember, this is covering 100% of the cost. That's not to say that your child couldn't take out some sort of student loan, some sort of assistance, or have scholarships or grants or something. This is if you wanted to bear 100% of the cost. So what we always tell brand new parents is, okay, yeah, your goal might be $600 a month, but if you can't start there, start somewhere. Start at 50, start at 100, start at 100, whatever you can do, start somewhere. Because just like with financial independence, the longer you wait, the harder and harder it is and the more work you have to do to get there.
So we've talked about who's going to fund it. We've talked about how much it's going to cost. Let's talk about some of the tools that are actually going to help you now pay for education. So this is where I want to transition into the 529 segment of the show.
Yep.
And 529s have revolutionized how you save for college. Because the whole thing with 529s that makes them so exciting is that you put money in to an investment plan. Every state has them throughout the country.
Yep.
Some even have multiple 529 plans. The money gets invested. It grows. If you use it for educational purposes, completely tax-free growth.
Yeah, we try to tell folks it's kind of like a Roth IRA for college. I mean, that's really kind of the way that it works. And I think what's really remarkable is it used to just be a college thing.
Yeah.
But that's changed a little bit. We'll talk some about that as well.
Yeah, we got new legislation that it's really put things on its ear in the fact that this was the 2017 tax reform that went into effect last year in 2018. Is that now 529's two big provisions got changed that was really exciting stuff. Is that we're now allowed to pay for K through 12 private school.
Really significant change because a lot of folks only view 529 plans as just paying for college. Well, with the Tax Reform Act, now you can actually use it to pay for private elementary and primary schools.
You also can now use 529 accounts for ABLE accounts. So if you have, and this is one of those things I think, realize I have a daughter that's autistic, and we don't know what the future completely holds for her.
Sure.
But so we are funding a full-on 520. We started out funding a full 529.
Right, when she was born, right?
When she was born, you start questioning, well, what does her future hold? Is she going to be college bound? Do we need to be thinking, for home care, for after something's happened to us? What I love is the government is smart enough to say, let's give these parents some flexibility. They already have enough stuff they're struggling with. Let's make sure that they don't have to make life decisions while their child is 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old. Now you can move those 529 assets that maybe you put in for for college or something in the future, but you determine that's not going to be in your child's future. You can now easily transfer those assets from the 529 plans to their siblings or relative, the ABLE accounts, which are essentially, it's a much more cost-effective special needs type trust, because these ABLE accounts are related in the way the legislation was set up to 529s, but you get to invest for your unique learner, your special needs, and so that in the future it's tax-free if it's used for their medical and health and maintenance.
So obviously in that scenario like you laid out, it makes a lot of sense to think about, okay, potentially using 529 assets to pay for or to roll into an ABLE and make that. Does it make sense to use 529 assets to pay for K through 12? Is that something that you ought to do if you're someone sending your kids to private school?
This was something, I thought about that is because it does seem very exciting that you can use these 529 assets for K through 12, but the thing is you need compounding growth. K through 12, your kids are 4 to 5 years old, all the way up to they're 17, 18 years old. Every year that money can work for you is valuable. There's a lot of power to it. Now, look, I'm going to be honest. I'm always transparent with you guys. I send my daughter to a special school, that for unique learners. And it's not cheap.
Sure.
It's definitely not cheap. And, it's always due about the same time estimated tax payments are due.
All right.
I got squeezed last year because I'm such a, I'll just say it, tightwad, that if you want to, the tuition's very expensive. If you paid it over time, they charge you this huge finance premium. You essentially have to pay an insurance premium as well as a finance charge. So Tightwad Brian pays it all up front. I'm paying this thing up front so I can get the cheapest prices possible. I got squeezed. I had estimated tax payments. I had that. So I did take a few $1,000s out of my daughter's 529 account. It worked out beautifully. And it was truthfully 45% of it was appreciation, which I thought was awesome.
That's kind of cool to think about Uncle Sam paying for a little bit of the...
Uncle helped me out on funding her account. Exactly so I thought that was a very powerful thing. I will tell you have to be careful with this new K through 12 provision.
Okay.
Because not every state has kind of implemented this. If you think about it, you would think when I heard this was all over. When this came out, everybody was so excited about this K through 12. You're like, well, that's all 50 states, right? No, we ran into this. I think it was Colorado. We had a client in Colorado that the state has not recognized. Only 21 states offer deductions or credits for K through 12 expenses. 29 states do not.
So there are 29 states out there that won't let you use.
They have not adopted that provision yet.
So it's just something. If you're thinking about using this, there's a strategy you think you might employ. Make sure you measure twice, cut once, so you don't have some unforeseen consequences if you're going to use those assets.
The other thing that's important is that this caps out at $10,000 a year. You can't, so if your private school tuition is $40,000 a year, you can't pull $40,000 out of a 529. Right. You're capped at $10,000 a year, assuming your state lets you do it. ABLE accounts, I've kind of given you guys the scoop on that. Let's talk about, I want to kind of now change gears and talk about choosing a 529 plan.
Yeah, this is a big one, Brian, and I don't think that this is something we've covered in previous shows. We used to talk about choosing them and how you think about the plans, but as we were digging into our research, we found some things that are a little more frightening about selecting a plan than you might have otherwise thought.
I will personally, because it's amazing. You want to know what creates incredible knowledge? Experience. That's why they call it wisdom. It is one of those things because a lot of you, I'm going to use some terms, go anywhere, deduct and run. And then there's the 16 states that you just have to stay. But
Right,
I mean,
right,
have y'all
right.
ever heard those terms? I mean, go anywhere, deduct and run. We're talking about 529 plans. This is something I had not heard a lot of people talk about. So let's kind of jump into this. There are 23 states, and we've got a great representation on the screen. These are what's called go anywhere states, where out-of-state as well as in-state participants of these 529 plans get the same benefit. You can go anywhere, you can come in, you can go out. There's no difference between you.
Or there's no tax benefit at all. So a lot of these don't have a state tax benefit, so it doesn't matter if you live in a different part of the country. You can open one there, or if you live there, you can open one elsewhere.
And then there's 11 states that are considered deduct and run. These are places where there are some state tax benefits. And then if you actually put the money into these 529 plans but moved them to another state because you thought their plan was better, there's no penalty. They're not going to penalize you for taking the money. That's why it's deduct, meaning you took the tax benefit and then you ran by moving to another 529 provider.
Or let's just make it even a little more real. Say that you lived in one state where you were paying state income tax and you contributed to their 529 and you got a tax benefit, and then you just moved to another state and you thought, okay, well, I'll just move my 529 over. These 11 are okay. You can do that. There is no issue.
I kind of resemble that person that's moved to another state with 529 assets. We'll get to that because that leads to a great transition. That there are 16 states that offer a tax benefit for in-state participants, but they won't allow you to transfer out to an out-of-state plan and keep the tax benefit.
That's right. These are recapture states. If you lived there and you took advantage of it and then you left and you tried to roll it out, you'll actually get a tax form saying, give us back our tax money that we gave you. You now owe us that money. So if you live in one of the red states that's on the screen right now, or maroon or crimson.
You see Georgia's on there.
Georgia is on there. That's one of the ways that we learn about that. You have to be really careful about moving your 529 assets out of these states if you have a plan there.
So I saw this article and I was like, is this legit? So I actually went, this is how nerdy I am. I went and I pulled the Georgia's Path to College disclosure sheets. Big PDF you can download and really nerd out on this thing if you're having trouble sleeping. And sure enough, there is a complete recapture provision in there.
Yep.
So my question, here's something now, I do not know the answer to this. So somebody who's already done the research on this, I have a daughter that qualifies to roll these assets, my Georgia 529, to ABLE. Are they going to come after me if I take my 529 assets and move them to an ABLE and try to recapture all those state tax benefits?
I kind of wish I knew the answer to that, that's kind of interesting. Surely not.
I poked around. I poked around a little bit and even thought about, because it's not really disclosed in the disclosure paperwork. I don't think they thought about that, because I bet that recapture
probably doesn't apply.
I don't know if it predated the all the changes that happened with the 2018 tax reform. But it is something just to think about. If you've looked at that, if you're one of these people that qualifies for ABLE, but you have 529 assets and you know anything about these recapture rules, let us know.
So I'm actually, we have the live chat. If you listen to this and you watch us live on every other Tuesday, we have a live chat going. There's tons of great stuff in there right now. I'm just waiting to see if somebody drops that in. Oh yeah, I have experience with this. So obviously one of the ways that you select how to do a 529 plan is based on the tax benefit of your state or how portable it is from state to state. But that's not the only way that we select 529 plans, right?
No. So, there's several things. And I'm going to tell you one of them that gripes me a little bit. But it's a little pet peeve. But let's talk about best 529s. There has now become where every year people get excited because Morningstar, which is the rating agency that does a lot of your basic investments, we use Morningstar.
We use it all the time.
To go check out and see how mutual funds are rated, how exchange traded funds are rated. Well, they also do the 529 plans. They come out with their best, and they only have 4 gold-rated plans.
Yep, and I think they rate their plans gold, silver,
and bronze.
Right? They have 3 different levels of plans.
In the gold plans, here's what to be a gold plan, you have to have low fees, high-performing investments in a manager, well-researched asset allocation, wide range of investment options, and strong oversight from the state and program manager.
So it sounds pretty
noble.
good, right?
And so if you look at gold plans, I don't have any complaints with. They really are some decent plans.
And I think there were 4 of them in Morningstar's most recent rating, right? There were 4 plans that came in as gold plans. There was the Illinois, Virginia, Nevada, and Utah plans, right?
And I'll tell you, Vanguard is one of the primary providers that you see in a lot of these gold plans. So that's something. Now, here's the part that irks me a little bit. Because Morningstar does this thing where they have advisor plans and then they have direct sold plans. And they keep them on two different planes. They say, because they
advisor meaning you can only buy those from a financial advisor, or direct sold meaning you buy it directly from the state or directly from the provider.
And if you don't think this is an issue, let me give you a data point that's going to blow your mind. There is the Virginia College America plan is sold by a sales force, meaning that there's a big a neighborhood financial advisory firm.
You'd recognize
that
the name.
They put everybody in the Virginia plan. It doesn't matter what the state tax deductions are in your state. It doesn't matter about the whole, recapture rules.
Right.
If you work with this advisor that works for this institution, they're going to put you in the Virginia plan. A lot of you are going to probably say, wait a minute, I'm in the Virginia plan. I'm going to say because you got sold this plan, because 21.5% of all 529 assets are in the Virginia College America Fund. And that's because they have a sales force.
I just think that, because think about, if you just thought population-wise, I don't know that 21.5% of our population lives in Virginia. Would you agree with that?
For sure.
I don't think that's true. So it's amazing that so many assets are in that plan.
So let me get to why this is a gripe. So remember, the Virginia College America Fund is an advisor plan. And then you have direct plan. Now look, advisor plan-wise, not a bad plan because, comparative to some other plans out there that are real stinkers, it does all right.
Sure.
But what I don't like about what Morningstar does, and I think they have a conflict of interest in this, and the fact that there's a lot of money that's going out there being pushed for advertising and other things, is they take these two separate lists, but when they come out with their annual rankings, guess how many lists they have? They have one. So on their silver list of these, and silver's pretty good. These are some pretty good plans. We have some data to show you. You will see that somehow there's some advisor-based plans that have made it on that silver list. So we wanted to tear into the numbers a little bit.
Yeah, so I think you can see here the 4 gold-rated plans, and you can see the other silver-rated plans.
There's not a ton of these. This is an honor if you get put on this list.
That's exactly right. It seems interesting, and if I'm hearing you right, what's really interesting is they don't differentiate the different types of plans when they're doing the ratings, but amongst gold, silver, bronze, right?
Yeah, and you see it's a very unique select list. So you're like, wow. So if you made it on gold or silver, you're probably a pretty jam-up plan. So let's actually dig a little deeper into the numbers. So let's first go ahead and pull up the next slide, Bo. These are the gold plans. Look at this. Notice what they have in common. You got Utah, which we know is Vanguard. The average internal expenses is 0.13, 0.57. No commissions whatsoever. So this is pretty much what you're paying. The Virginia Invest 529. Now listen, that's different. That's actually a direct one. That's not sold by advisors.
That's a really good point. Not all states just have one plan.
No, they have
so you
multiple
have to make sure
plans.
that you're buying the right plan from the right state.
So notice that's Virginia's Invest 529, not Virginia's College America. And its internal expenses are 0.14 to 0.77. Very affordable, reasonable. Illinois has multiple too, by the way. So if you're in Chicago or someplace, you're like, I got an Illinois plan. No promises you have the right one, because the Bright Start plan is very cost effective. Nevada, which is another Vanguard plan too, 0.15, 0.44. All great. That looks great. Now flip the script.
Yep.
Look at this next slide. Wait a minute. This is the silver rated plans. Look at those two on the far left. Why are they so much higher than all the ones over on the far right with the internal expenses?
And this is just showing internal expense ratios of the plans, right? Just the underlying internal expense ratios.
Annual costs. Look at those two plans that have the asterisks on them on the far left. Those are advisor sold plans. And there he is. The second one from the right is College America. Look at its internal expenses are almost 0.8%. You compare that to some of the Vanguard funds and so forth, where they're less than 0.2%. You can see you're paying close to 4 times the annual cost. And this doesn't even count the commission of 4.25%. There's usually a sales charge of somewhere between 3.5% to 4.25%, all the way up until on top of that when you buy the funds. There's a sales commission that gets charged. And that's money that doesn't go towards your kid's college education, goes right into commissions. And that stuff bothers me. Why would Morningstar let these two much more higher expensive, but you know what happens when they get put on that silver list? All of a sudden, everybody thinks, wow, this must be a great plan. There are bronze plans that are significantly cheaper, including like Georgia.
Yep.
Georgia's plan is a bronze plan. It's significantly cheaper than College America. Why did College America make the list? I think that there's some funny business going on because this organization has a lot of money behind it.
So I think the moral of the story there is it's fantastic to use Morningstar ratings, but make sure you actually understand how they're rating the 529s they're recommending, and make sure you actually do your research. Just because it's on a best of list, we talk about this all the time, even with like investments, just because it makes the best of list doesn't mean it's what's best for you. So do your homework.
Well, you just have to be careful. Conflicts of interest are everywhere.
Right.
You have to follow the money. And I think it's interesting when you look at every one of the sales literatures for those two advisor sold plans that they all reference Morningstar.
Yep.
And so there is a little bit of greasing the skids of they scratch each other's back. And,
That's right.
And you guys be careful with that stuff. So let's now talk about using 529s.
Perfect.
I've told you these things are magical in the fact that you invest money as long as you use it for college purposes or educational purposes. And by the way, when I say college, that's not fair. We have helped clients use it for trade schools.
Yep.
I'm talking about cosmetology. You want to be a welder. 529 assets, not only do they now do K through 12, not only do they do college, but also they can do trade schools and all kind of other things that a lot of people traditionally don't think about when they're thinking about college planning. Because your kids might pivot and they might decide, hey, I'm not going to a traditional 4-year college. I'm going to a 2-year trade school.
That's right.
These assets will still be very helpful for you. So, Bo, let's walk everybody through the cans versus the can nots of a 529.
That's right. When you want to use your 529, it can be used for tuition, fees, book supplies, and computers. So the cost of college that we think about. And another thing that's really unique about 529s, because a lot of folks say this, well, I have multiple kids and I think, one of my kids might get a scholarship or they might go to a different school. How do I think about saving? One of the great things about 529s is you can actually change the beneficiary on 529 plans. So if you save more for an older sibling and they end up not using it, you can actually roll it down to the younger sibling. So it's a great planning opportunity.
Or here's something, because sometimes people say, I saved all this money. My child, he just didn't go to college. So I got all this money saved up. What do I do? Like, well, you have time. I mean, as long as they have a child before they reach 30,
yep.
You can pass those assets down to their children.
That's right.
I mean, you can change the beneficiary. That's a huge benefit and opportunity. So all is not lost just if your child doesn't use these resources.
So then some of the cannots is you cannot use 529s for travel costs, health insurance, or extracurriculars. It actually has to be for tuitions or fees. And then you can't double dip. This is another huge one that folks miss all the time. It can kind of get you in trouble. You can't claim the tax credits, some like the
American Opportunity Credit, Lifetime Learning Credit.
For expenses used or paid from a 529 plan.
So a lot of you are probably watching this and go, wait a minute, I've got a kid that's about to go to college. What's more valuable, the credit or the 529 with its appreciation and it could be tax-free? Here's the thing you need to understand. The American Opportunity Credit, it's a dollar for dollar match on the first $2,000 you spend on education. And then for the next $2,000 is 25%. So if you put in $4,000, if you spend $4,000 of qualified education expenses, you would get a $2,500 tax credit.
Right.
So you can see that's pretty powerful stuff. That's even better than the tax rates you're avoiding on capital gains. So credits, the tax credit of the American Opportunity Credit is actually much more powerful than even that tax-free growth.
Right.
So I would tell you the way this all works, since you can't double dip, the example I've seen used out there is if you knew you had $12,000 of qualified educational expenses, you need to chisel out $4,000 that you're going to allocate towards that American Opportunity Credit.
Yep.
And then you could pay the other $8,000 with 529. And since those are two distinct, buckets of money, $4,000 for the AOC, and then $8,000
Yep.
for they're not double on top of each other, so you're okay. And remember, also think about scholarships. If you're getting any type of grants, scholarships, you have to deduct that money out from if you're in that double dip calculation. So be very careful with that.
And again, a great point. That's not double dipping. You're just optimizing the resources that are available to you.
So people probably now you're like, because let's go ahead and let's play pretend. Because everybody who's got their kid in rec ball They think that they're sitting on the next LeBron. Let's face it.
I feel attacked right now.
I use a different sport, but I am probably leaning and nudging toward you. But you were a great athlete. You still are a good athlete. Just we've seen you on the softball fields. We've seen how people from churches call you over me. So there's my feelings are still hurt.
Stop.
But here's the thing. A lot of kids, you think that your kids are going to get a college scholarship.
Yep.
So you're saying, well, I'm nervous about these 529s because what happens if Junior is a rocket scientist that somebody wants to give a full ride to, or what if they are the next LeBron, who, by the way, didn't go to college, so maybe that's not the perfect example. But you have an athlete that probably can get a full ride. What happens to these 529 assets? Well, here's the thing. You can get access to 529 assets if your child gets a scholarship or grant or something, and you get access to it, and what you put in is completely tax-free, and then the growth will just be taxed like normal, ordinary income taxes. Yep. You won't have any penalties. Nobody's going to penalize you for taking these assets. For the scholarships. So you could get access to it. I will tell you that I think the better use is probably to roll it to a sibling, a relative, or even for yourself. You go back to school if you so choose to.
Yeah, another thing that I just want to mention that because it's so important. We have parents ask us all the time, well, what if I oversave in this 529? And like a LeBron example, my kid doesn't even go to college. I have nobody to pass it down to. The worst thing that happens is any money that you put into a 529, you always get to pull out tax-free, penalty-free. It's only the earnings on those dollars that you have to pay taxes and penalties on if you're not doing like the scholarship thing. So it's not like just because you put money in there, you are captivating that. Yeah. You always get that money back.
You do have flexibility with 529 assets. So let's talk about one other thing. Just people are always worried about financial aid.
Oh, yeah.
Now, here's another one. I think this is more of a scare tactic than it's actually what your financial situation. You can do some planning on this, but I don't want you to just like we tell everybody, don't let the tax tail wag the dog. You have to. It's kind of the same thing with financial aid with students. FAFSA,
yep. The free application for federal student aid.
That's the form you have to fill out every year when you're applying for student loans. And everybody knows, here's the thing. If it's in the child's or the parent's name, there is some impact to that financial aid calculation.
Assets, right.
Now, a unique thing is that grandparents, because they're one step removed, they don't fall in on that form. You don't have to disclose it. With the caveat that when they pay distributions, meaning you take a withdrawal, the grandparents take a withdrawal from the 529 for your education, that is considered unreported income. So half of that does go against your financial aid. So we tell people, if you are going to use this strategy with your grandparents or a relative, maybe it could be a cousin or something like that, do it in the latter part of their education years. We typically recommend like the second or third semester of a sophomore year on a 4-year college. So that way you're past filling out those student aid applications. It's something you just ought to consider. And by the way, even if you are going to have to count 529 assets, because this is why I don't think it's the boogeyman hiding under your bed as much as everybody makes it. You get a $20,000 asset protection allowance, so they get to exclude $20,000 of it. And then the penalty on top of that is just 5.64%.
Of the value of the plan.
So let me give you an example. You have a $30,000 529 account. 20,000 is going to get excluded. Okay. So we'll have 10,000 that's going to count against you. 5.64, that means that $564
is going to be
out of $30,000. That's valuable, but it's a lot different. Like custodial accounts, like UGMAs and those type of things, they're 20%. So you can see how that's much different. 5.64 is substantially lower than the 20% that custodial accounts and those type of things impact you from a financial aid. I didn't want to spend a ton of time on it, but I did want to go a little deeper into it so people would understand what they're getting into.
Yep.
So let's talk about, I wanted to go over some alternatives. We talked about 529s. I think we've shaken that tree a pretty good chunk.
It's not the only way to pay for college.
Let's talk about some of the other things, because you've been educated, but that doesn't mean somebody's not going to try to talk you into something else, or you're going to even say, hey, I've created a better mousetrap. So let's talk about some of the ways we hear people talking about funding education.
Yep.
One, Roth IRAs.
Roth is one that is, people ask us about that all the time. but I don't know that I would say Roth IRA is the best way to pay for college.
It's definitely the reason I don't like touching Roth IRAs is because that money, remember, you can't do retirement loans. So you have to do it all. It's the kids can go get student loans. You can't do that for retirement. So it's perfectly, we need those assets working for retirement. So leave that retirement money alone.
You gave this great example early on. We're talking about, if you pull your money out of 529 and pay for K through 12, you're not letting that money do what it can do. We talk all the time about you have your army of dollar bills that is working to build your financial independence. You don't want to take your army out of the battle early. And when you use Roth to pay for college, that's exactly what you're doing.
People get excited because you do get access to the corpus or the contribution tax-free.
Yep.
But guys, just be careful. I'd rather have that tax-free growth, that 88 times over that y'all hear me talk about all the time. Take advantage of that. Don't use it for juniors education.
So we're going to say Roth. No, let's not do that.
I don't like that idea. Life insurance. There's a lot of people out there pushing. Matter of fact, I was even surprised when I was looking at some of the education websites. I was like, which one of these guys is related to a life insurance agent? Because they were talking about how great it was that you could build up cash value. This is the way these things are sold. You can start, as soon as your child is born, you can start investing in some permanent insurance, and then you're going to get access to that cash value tax-free because you just take a loan from the policy.
Tax-free.
And then guess what? This doesn't count against you for financial aid purposes. That is how this thing is sold. Now, here's the part they don't tell you. It can take you 10 years or more for your cash value to even surpass what you've even put into the plan.
Because remember, when you're buying life insurance, some portion of that is paying for the actual cost of insurance.
At least 50%, if not even more, of the first year's payment is going strictly to commissions.
That's right.
That's why you're kind of behind. It's going to take a decade likely to get you caught up.
Yep.
And then here's another thing, ongoing costs. I was just picking on that Virginia plan because it had internal operating expenses of close to 0.8%. The average permanent life policy charges upward of 2% per year for administrative and investment costs. That's a pretty big headwind.
Expensive.
So just be careful. I don't love life insurance for college funding. Student loans. How do they work? There's two types of student loans. There's federal and then there's private. Look, federal is probably going to have a lower interest rate because it's somewhat, it's backed by the government. There's been some changes. I know in 2010 they changed all this. My thing on student loans is know what your major pays. Know what if you're going to go into a major that doesn't pay well, maybe you don't need to do private school. Maybe you need to do public or even community college. It's just it's the whole plan. When we do retirement plan, we say begin with the end in mind.
That's right. I was going to say the exact same thing, Brian. Is one of the things that bothers me is how easy it is for students to get student loans. And I've even had family members and loved ones who the advice they were given when they got to school was, hey, go get as much as you can each semester. Go get as much as you can and we'll just figure it out. Go get as much as you can, we'll figure it out. That's horrible advice. You don't want to just rack that up. And again, we're trusting 18, 19, 20-year-olds to make these huge decisions, rack up this debt. Student loans are a great resource to be there available, but they, just like you said, they're a chainsaw. They can be very effective if used responsibly, but if used irresponsibly, they can really set you behind.
And be careful, kids. I don't want to put you against your parents, but just because they say go get what you need, and then by the end of college, I'll just pay it off. I've had a lot of sob stories where you run up all this student loan debt, and then mom and dad they have to sit you down at the end of college and be like, yeah, things didn't work out like I thought they would.
Right.
So that's why if you're subsidizing lifestyle while you're in college, you will regret going to that buying the beer for the kegger with your student loan money. I mean, but I know we all laugh, but there's a lot of people that are subsidizing lifestyle. And they don't realize they're going to be paying for that keg of beer for 10 years.
That's right.
I mean, it's just scary stuff.
Keg of beer is going to cost them thousands of dollars.
I say it with a little laughter, but it's just sad. It's kind of a tragedy / comedy all in the same time. So let's talk about the best alternatives that are truly free money or things that you ought to consider.
We think that the best ways to pay for college are not Roths, not life insurance. Student loans are fine, but not the best. The best way, just like you said, is free money.
So let's get into these free money things. Bo, I felt like here's a guy, which y'all should know. This is a walk down memory lane. I hired Bo right out of college.
Yep.
Bo was young.
Real young.
He's because I think you made it through college in like 3 years, 3.5 years.
Yeah,
or
I
something.
went through fairly quickly.
Here's the other thing. Bo just had a birthday like last week.
That's right.
So if you do the math on that, he's a late August birthday.
That's right.
That makes him the dead youngest kid in the class.
Yep.
Man, your parents just hit you on all things.
Yeah, it wasn't ideal.
Dead youngest. I mean, you youngest kid in the class, and and then you did it fast. That's amazing. But here's the truth of the matter. This is what I'm getting to. Bo actually took a pay cut when he took his job with me. Is that true or false?
That is a true statement.
Meaning you had so many grants and scholarships, you were actually making money off of going to college.
Again, I was pretty fortunate that I was unfortunate.
Or unfortunate.
I was pretty fortunate. I was unfortunate. So there were a lot of scholarships. There were a lot of grants. A lot of the grants were refundable, and so. I went to the University of Georgia. When I went to the University of Georgia, we had the Hope Scholarship, which covered a big portion of tuition and that sort of thing. So a lot of the grant money and a lot of the scholarship money I had not only would cover all the additional fees and meal plans and all that stuff, but I would actually get a little bit extra money every semester.
So I would tell you guys, this is something that I was always amazed about. There are so many different scholarships out there, trade organization, schools. If you go out there and figure out, you just have to go turn the stones over. That's the truth of the matter. You might have to write an essay or two. Grants, it's based upon needs and things like that.
Yep.
So, definitely the scholarships has an element of the harder you work, the more benefit
That's
you can
exactly
help
right.
pay for your college. And these grants, I know I served on some scholarship committees for nursing programs and other things with a hospice that I did a lot of volunteer in. And we didn't have that many people that would apply. And these were like $2,500 grants. The scholarships that we were giving out.
That was the second thing I was going to say. Now, obviously, if you're someone out there who has need-based aid, right, like your family has a very low EFC or whatever the expected family contribution, it's not hard, and the schools will try to help you with that. If you're listening to the Money Guy show and maybe you're someone who's had some success and so your child is not going to qualify for need-based aid, they have to be willing to put in the work to go pursue these scholarships and these grants. But what's amazing is not a ton of people do it. We've talked to people all the time and said, oh yeah, I wrote this one essay and I had to give a presentation and I got $2,000 a year towards my college education. If you're just like most things in life, if your student is willing to just go a little bit further, take that little extra step, it's amazing what a financial impact they can have on them.
And then I want to do these last two that we had, with 3 things we had on here. Work study. Mm-hmm. There are jobs you can do on campus that potentially could help lower your costs. Meaning you put in the time, you put in the elbow grease, and then the college will, like being a TA.
Did bus driver do that?
I just got paid. It was the highest paying job on the university.
That's what I was sitting there thinking.
But I was not like, TAs is what I'm thinking about. When you do a TA type thing, you can do a work study program where if you will serve or do some type of work on campus, they will give you credit towards tuition.
Yep.
There's also, this is one, by the way, this is intern, even though he's not an intern.
No, he's intern, Daniel.
Tuition reimbursement from employer. Daniel's let us know when college, he worked at Publix.
Yeah. Nope.
And because he worked at Publix, and I think his minimum was 10 hours a week, and he'd worked there for over a year, that he got, it was several $1,000s of tuition reimbursement, because employers are allowed to get $5,250 a year. The IRS will let an employer, deduct that for employees, and it's tax-free benefit for the employee and a deductible expense for the employer. It's a win-win all the way around. And that's why you'll see, like, a lot of the fast food joints do this, like McDonald's. I asked Daniel when he was doing the research on this, I said, how long do you have to work at McDonald's to qualify for the tuition reimbursement program? He said 90 days. So you only have to go flip burgers for 3 months, and then you qualify for their tuition reimbursement. And he said they just dropped the hours too. I think it's down to 15 hours per week. That's not the craziest thing. I know when I was in high school, I worked at Hardee's. I was a crew, working the drive-through. I definitely was knocking out 15 hours a week, and I did that for years. I did that 3 or 4 years in high school. I could have easily qualified for some of this stuff if they offered it.
So if you're a college student out there listening to this, or if you are the parent of a college student, someone who's out there seeking internships, something that really might set your student or set you apart from your peers is if you approach your employer and say, hey, thank you so much for offering me this internship. I know about this program where instead of paying me, why don't you think about doing a tuition reimbursement? Here's how it all works out. That right there is just going to set you up to look down. I know if one of our interns would have approached us with that, we'd have been like, oh, okay, you're hired. Yeah. I mean, that's fantastic financial planning. So do those sort of things, and that's a way to make yourself stand out.
Hey, I had Daniel put this one on co-ops because I knew a lot of guys that went to Georgia Tech back. We're UGA guys, but we had nerdy friends at Georgia Tech.
I still have nerdy Georgia Tech friends.
And nerdy friends from Georgia Tech, a lot of them worked co-ops, meaning that they would take a semester where they go work for an employer. And then that employer for that semester of work would then pay for the tuition. These were programs through the universities, pretty powerful. So I even knew kids at Georgia Tech and some of these very technical colleges, they went and did an internship. The employer loved them so much that they were trying to recruit them that they ended up paying for the rest of their college.
Yeah.
I mean, that stuff happens all the time. So guys, go out there and go the road less traveled and see if there's all kind of things that you can do to help you pay for and get that free money. Don't pass up the free money. And then I want to do one thing that I thought was interesting was let's talk about, because we've talked a lot about college, but there's some new stats that are out there is traditional college really as required as we want it to? We've always been told in society.
Now, here's what I think is so interesting, Brian. You're getting older. I am too, I guess. And it seems like back in the day, there was this thought about like the American dream. And, you go buy, and we did a whole show on home ownership and buying. And it seems like the mindset has even changed. I feel like college is one of those things too. It used to be this coming of age thought that the next step in my journey is I'm going to go to college, right? Yep. And I think maybe because of that mindset, we've gotten ourselves, this country, in a student loan crisis, if you will, because people just naturally think that's the next step, right?
Well, and I think about it because we work with a lot of small business owners, and we're a wealth management company, so these are people that are very successful. I mean, we have welders, we have heat and air repairs, we have exterminators, handymen. I mean, and none of these jobs required 4-year traditional college.
That's right.
I mean, it's very interesting. And I think that there's a lot of stats. Let me give you some stats just to make you go, these are things to make you go, Sure. Like we didn't even talk about that in show prep. That just kind of came to me. Things that make you go, about education is that 27% of college grads have a job related to their major. Wait a minute. Did you hear that?
Less than 1 in 3? So when you sit in your college class and you're sitting there and you look to the left and you look to the right.
No, it's more than that. You have to look behind you too. You have to look behind you because 73% are actually not using their major
not
from
even
college.
Using the degree.
So let's add some other stats. 45% of college grads under 27 have a job that doesn't require a college degree.
And I just want to throw this out there again. A lot of those folks are clients of us, our wealth management clients who have built or are building financial independence without having a college degree.
And then here's the people that, it just is go along to get along. 23% of college students only went because it was expected of them.
Yeah, and that one, that one kind of breaks my heart a little bit because it's an expensive endeavor. Now, don't mishear us. We love college. We think it's fantastic for folks who are going to use that degree and pursue it well. But if you're someone who the vocation you want to go into and the path that you already want to be on, and that path is what's probably going to make more sense for you than going and racking up hundreds of thousands of dollars of college debt, maybe traditional college, a trade school, a vocational school, something like that might be a better fit for you.
Yeah, have conversations. This is, if you're a young person watching this, or if you are the parent or grandparent, start having conversations about how the world works. Yep. What's your job? What's your vision plan for what the future will hold? And then let's figure out what are the tools to make that happen. Is it college? If it is, let's fund it this way because this is going to be the best way. But maybe if you're more of an entrepreneurial mindset and you're always good with your hands, I'm always amazed in society because anytime your refrigerator breaks, your heat and air, guys, what is the first thing they go tell you? When you call them up, be like, hey, even if I come there and I just flip a breaker switch, it's going to be $150 minimum
every
charge.
single time.
I mean, they're going to, because they know when they get there, more than likely, you've just not flipped the switch. You haven't reset the power. They know, but they get $150 just for showing up. So there's a chance a lot of you entrepreneurial-minded people that are handy, you might have a path forward that you still could be extremely successful, but just think about these things. Yep. And look, I love college. It is the thing that my dad went to college because he got a college scholarship at University of Florida for football. I climbed on his shoulders, went to UGA, and now I got an accounting degree, and I went up even higher. But I have full understanding that there are other paths, especially with society, with education costing as much. I just want you guys to be aware of all opportunities and don't go sign a 6-figure student loan debt without understanding how you're going to pay that thing off.
That's exactly right.
So guys, this has been a great discussion on education. I hope you can see we tried to add tremendous value, load you up with tons of Daniel stats and all the things that, just so you know a little bit more than your peers. And we got to get out there and get more people using 529 tools and things like that. So go tell a friend and family member. You're probably catching on with all this free information we're sharing. You're like, what's the catch? Why are these guys just giving it away? We call this the abundance cycle. All we ask is that we want you to come, listen, learn, grow with all the free advice, but you are going to reach a point where you're like, whoa, this thing has turned into something. I might need somebody to look over my shoulder and make sure I'm not screwing it up. And that's when that abundance cycle kicks in. You'll remember, hey, it was the Money Guy team that really hooked me up. Let me give those guys a call because we work with clients all over the country. If you want to stay connected, because we know that it's going to be years, it's going to take a process for you to grow, at least go subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have people ask, what is that number behind us? That's YouTube subscribers. As you're watching videos and you see that number was 4,000 or then 10,000, you'll see that's all the growth of you guys loving on us and then subscribing, ringing the bell. If you're listening to this on the podcast, you continue to subscribe. We'd love to know if you're doing it from Stitcher, from, iHeartRadio. I mean, there's iTunes. And then
Spotify.
Spotify is the big thing that they're really trying to grow and take over some of the market. So I'd love to know if you're listening on Spotify, shoot us an email.
Absolutely.
Go to themoneyguy.com and contact us. Let us know how you're reaching out if you think it's unique and are ways we can improve. And you guys have been shaping this show for going on 14 years now. We want you to continue to be a part of our success. I'm your host, Brian Preston, Mr. Bo Hansen. We'll see you soon.